Okay, my name is Marc Rotenberg. I am president of the Electronic Privacy Information Center. EPIC is an independent nonprofit organization based in Washington. We were established actually 25 years ago. Our focus is on emerging privacy and civil liberties issues. You will see from our word cloud for 2019, many of the issues that we are working on today are reflected in the program of CPDP. So for us, this conference is really a wonderful opportunity to learn from the participants and to share some of our own interests. Of course, GDPR is present, as are drones and algorithmic transparency. We added this year, in honor of a famous author, the phrase surveillance capitalism, which is now featured on the EPIC word cloud, and very pleased to have Shoshana Zuboff with us for this ceremony. For those of you who joined us for the preceding session, we talked about the case against the Trump presidential, our case against the Trump Presidential Commission, where they tried to get the state voter data. And in the US, this was opposed by many privacy groups and civil rights groups and voting groups, and we successfully ended the operation of the commission. We also recognized in the US at our June Awards dinner the secretaries of state, the people who are responsible for safeguarding voter data, for their very good work in protecting the privacy of American voters. That's the secretary from the state of Maine, the secretary from the state of California, and the executive director of the National Association of State Secretaries. These are the people we honor in the US at our annual event. And here are the people who we have honored over the last 10 years at CPDP, and I'm just so proud to have had the opportunity to know many of these people and to share with them this recognition from EPIC. I see this year, in fact, the Council of Europe established the first award in recognition of Professor Rodota, who's a dear friend. Michael Kirby, the former Justice of the Australian High Court, Sophie Veld, who's with us this week, leading the charge on privacy in many domains, Jennifer Stoddart, the former Privacy Commissioner of Canada, this fellow Max Schrems, who's also with us. We gave an award to Jan-Philipp Albrecht, the Commissioner Viviane Reding, Alexander Dix, who chaired the International Working Group on Data Protection for many years. And last year we decided to give two awards, one to a policymaker, lawmaker, and the other to an advocate. And so we were very pleased to honor both Artemi Rayo, who was the former commissioner of the Spanish Data Protection Agency, and also Gus Hosein, who's the executive director of Privacy International. And we decided that this was a nice tradition and that we would continue to honor both policymakers and advocates at our annual awards ceremony in January at CPDP. I suspect you may have a sense who the award recipients will be this year, but we'll try to keep a little bit of surprise if we can. Before going to the awards, I also wanted to recognize the jury, the members of the awards committee who considered many of the nominations, and there was a lot of discussion, and there were so many extraordinary people. Of course, this is always a very difficult decision, but it was a very good jury and a very thoughtful discussion. I think many of you may know Ross Anderson at Cambridge and Alessandro Acquisti at Carnegie Mellon, Colin Bennett in Canada. We have with us Professor Jennifer Daskal, who's also a member of the EPIC Board of Directors, and Simon Davies. By the way, we recently published Simon's memoir, which is a wonderful book. We have copies out on the table. I urge you to grab one before they all disappear. David Flaherty, a former privacy commissioner in Canada. Pamela Jones-Harbour, former FTC commissioner. We recognized her, by the way, for voting against the Google acquisition of DoubleClick, which I think was a very prescient judgment on her part. Of course, Paul, who is organizing the conference. Happy to see Kristina Irion, who's been with EPIC for many years. Malavika Jayaram, who works with us, Pablo Molina, Helen Nissenbaum, Stephanie Perrin, Biljana Petkova, and Shoshana Zuboff. So thank you so much to our jury for your participation. And now I would like to introduce the person who will give the first award, and that is Max Schrems. Max. Yeah, sure. You're coming here.
I understand I'm staying here, or I'm coming over there.
Coming over here.
So first of all, one thing I gotta say about myself, I'm probably a bad choice to do any kind of ceremonial stuff because I'm usually the two-line person and leave again, if possible. On the other hand, it's probably a positive connection because I remember when I got this award, I was slightly embarrassed because I always think it's kind of weird to get these things, and we may relate on that note because we're just chatting before. So the first time I kind of got to know Joe was in the whole GDPR debate, and to me, he was always kind of this shining light in a kind of very weird Brussels bubble. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, it was amazing to me how my tiny topic, which was GDPR, and Edri did much more and Joe did much more. But in this world where we had huge interest on other sides and we had a tiny organization on one side, it's amazing if a person manages an organization to be so effective with so little resources compared to what the subject matters is that you all worked on. And that is the first thing that I was always amazed by, because this input-output ratio was amazing and something that is really hard to manage. The other thing, I never had Joe anywhere not being exactly on point. We have so many people in this privacy bubble that do blah, blah. There's a lot of air coming out with very little substance. And that is something that is amazing, that some person is so, whenever there's a question, he knows the right answer. He was always like prepared perfectly on any of these things. So that was the other thing where I was always amazed on that side. Finally, there is a certain no bullshit factor that I always enjoyed in any of your work that was always kind of amazing to me. And last but not least, that may again be more of a personal thing, there is a dark, cynical humor that I always sometimes enjoyed, because a lot of the things I think we couldn't cope with without having that humor. So in that sense, I'm overly happy that I'm apparently chosen to present this award to you.
So, thank you. If I thought I deserved to be on a list with Stefano Rodota and Viviane Redding and Jan Albrecht, then I wouldn't deserve to be standing here. This, believe it or not, is a privacy-enhancing technology, because I'm standing as a small speck on top of the work of an awful lot of people. In the 80s, we had people that are still involved in the EDRI network who were working on the Convention 108 of the Council of Europe. We had the people in the 90s that worked on the Data Protection Directive. We had the people who worked at the beginning of the 2000s on the e-privacy regulation, the directive. We had the people in the early 2000s that had the vision to set EDRI up in the first place. We have all of this work done by all of these visionary people. And when I joined EDRI in 2009, I wasn't starting from scratch. I was allowed to build with the fantastic network of the people whose identity is hidden behind this award tonight. So on behalf of those people who worked so hard in the 80s and the 90s and the last decade, I say thank you for the recognition that you've given to them through me. And sadly, today we're living in difficult times. We have fear being sold as strength. We have surrender being sold as pragmatism. And in the privacy environment, we see some of the most amoral, disgraceful lobbying that I've seen in a long time, including the misrepresentation of child rights, of lobbyists exploiting child exploitation to get what they want. So things aren't getting easier, but the community is getting bigger. So on behalf of the community, on behalf of the heroes that are in the audience and on the stage, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. So the next person to introduce an award is Shoshana Zuboff. Shoshana.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Is that good? No, there's a lot of happy drinking going on next door, so I want to make sure you can hear me above all that, because what I have to say about Giovanni Buttarelli is so important. And I want everyone to be able to hear about what an incredible leader Giovanni is, and not just in the usual ways. Giovanni has lifted our sights from the welter of details that preoccupy us in this work on a daily basis to the essence of the quality of the information civilization that will be our true legacy to the next generation and to the world. And at the same time, he plants our feet in the deepest values of the democratic prospect, reminding us that in the long arc of human history, these values are 5 minutes old. They represent our greatest achievements yet, and we relinquish them at our peril. I wanted to read you just a couple of paragraphs of a speech that Giovanni gave just last week to a group of young people. Because in my view, the work that all of us are gathered here to do this week and every day in our lives, in this important mission that we're on, our real audience is young people. Our real legacy is for the young people who walk the earth today. Hear, hear. And here's what Giovanni said, among other things. I've only selected a small bit just to give you the beauty of his thinking. We now live in a society and economy where data has become valued above almost all other things. In the last quarter of 2018, 7 of the 8 most highly valued companies were tech companies, all based on the West Coast of the US or in China. What a happy gathering. It means that never in human history has informational power been concentrated in so few hands. Those of a few companies and states often working in tandem. The challenge is whether our values of democracy, rule of law, and fundamental rights can survive in the face of this concentration of informational power. Privacy, the universal need to have space of different degrees of intimacy in our lives, communications, and relationships, is becoming a much bigger challenge than simply data protection. How wise and how grand is his vision and the depth of his thinking. So, Giovanni Buttarelli, you are our guardian on the wall. And for those of you who watch the Game of Thrones, that's the kind of wall I'm thinking about. that wall that separates the known world from all the worst dangers on the other side that are unseeable and unknowable, but we cannot allow them to take the wall. You do this work of guardianship, Giovanni, not only for the people of Europe, but at the frontier on behalf of the people of all the world. It is in recognition of your moral clarity and your courage, your faithfulness to humanity's greatest achievements, and your clear, unwavering voice that it is my honor to present you with this award on behalf of EPIC and indeed on behalf of all people who walk this planet. Thank you so much.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Shoshana, Mark, you kept me moved. Was not expecting such a storm of emotions. This prize is dedicated to my children. This is why my senior daughter is here, because of the sacrifices they perceived along the years. But it's also dedicated to my wonderful staff, particularly the one at the DPS, because what I achieved in the last few years is also because of this collective exercise. I cannot expect more. They are simply terrific, engaged, and fantastic people. So not only to Giovanni as person. This year, I celebrate 2 separate anniversaries. My 30th year on data protection, 25 years out of which in full-time position, and 10 years in the Brussels bubble in full-time. You may say too much, but I had the unique privilege starting at national level, moving then to the Council of Europe, OECD, other international fora, and to start then looking how the EU institutions work here in Brussels. And I also had a chance to, let's say, see the different view angles in terms of being a legislator, an enforcer, a professor, and now, let's say, a leader of an EU institution, also an advisor, but also a guy who's trying to cooperate with many sister authorities. 2018 has been a terrific, important year by data protection viewpoint. 2019 should be even better. There are many pending dossiers. This year, the CPDP edition is focusing on democracy, and we know how essential data protection is becoming now, not only for the protection of the rights of personality, but for all fundamental rights and freedoms. When I started data protection, it happened by chance. I was a member of the judiciary at that time, full-time engaged on criminal affairs, anti-mafia legislation, intelligence. And a colleague of mine retired. He was in charge of all international affairs. And the minister in person told us, you should, as good friends, take care of some of this dossier. But I need of you personally. You should be local. You cannot travel. You should stay here 24 hours per day, because at that time, criminal affairs were so sensitive, particularly because of the mafia attacks. And then he said, take this dossier, is dormant, sleeping, data protection. So that you will stay for years and years and years. It was 1989. 2 weeks later, I started chairing the national delegation negotiating Directive 95/46. And since then, I had the honor to see different generations of data protection provisions. At the occasion of the last conference on digital ethics, I said that now that data protection is entirely independent and autonomous from privacy, in the sense that now it's much more clear than years ago that who is doing what, where, and when, for which purposes, under which security measure is part of a fundamental right beyond any adverse effect in terms of privacy implications. I see that there is now a moment similar to the one we noted 25 years ago when data protection started being a reality. And in my view, this is the moment where we're discussing the values of the future. So thank you, Shoshana, for focusing on values, because I think that starting from e-democracy, we are now looking to the kind of, let's say, society we would like to build in the years to come in terms of not only well-known artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, and robotics implications, but also in terms of what we call the digital dividend, the surveillance capitalism. And therefore, I think it's time that all independent regulators start considering as a priority the need to focus on what we need other than GDPR, other than focusing on the intersection of these provisions with competition and consumer protection. It's quite important that we stay all engaged, while in the data protection area, there are many homeworks for the EU legislators and for us as CDPB. Many important dossiers moving from e-evidence to terrorist content, e-privacy regulation, not speaking about other well-known dossiers. So I can simply appreciate once again your beau geste, Marc and Shoshana. There are moments in your life where you should take a decision, and because of these 2 anniversaries, I did it, and my decision is that I will continue to serve data protection for the years to come. It doesn't matter where, in which position. What is essential is to continue giving to all of you with your contribution and cooperation my feedback, my contribution as well. Thank you for your attention.
So congratulations to Joe and Giovanni. Thank you all for joining us for this very nice occasion. And now let us celebrate.